will be taking place in Durban in July. Now, this event is aimed at documentary makers, particularly environmental and nature documentary works. Now, the Congress is calling on filmmakers to take part in the short documentary competition aimed at discovering the next generation or nature, environment, wildlife and adventure conservation filmmakers. This competition will be one of the key sessions at the Congress. But to tell us more from our Durban studio, we are joined by Pragna Parsotam-Kok, founder of Congress and the director of NEWF. A very good morning to you, Pragna, and thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Love.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Tell us more about this concept. Why did you decide to conceptualize this Nature, Environment and Wildlife Filmmakers Congress?
You know, there's a serious gap in our industry at the moment, where we have so many film festivals and markets going on in South Africa and particularly in Durban, and there's a gap for a meeting place for people who are talking about nature, environment and wildlife to come together and discuss hot topics around conservation and to tell those stories, and particularly African stories from African perspectives.
So take us through the short pitching documentary competition. What exactly are you looking for?
We are looking for filmmakers who are over the age of 18 to come and submit concepts about inspiring, engaging stories, next generation stories, you know, stories that aren't necessarily traditionally pure wildlife stories, but African stories that resonate in the nature, environment and wildlife space, where you talk about things from a personal level, rather than, well, you talk about, you know, it's about changing ideas, changing mindsets and discovering the next generation of filmmakers, and like I said, telling African stories from African perspectives, and to develop and transform this industry that we have.
And I can actually buy into that, because in the past I've looked at environmental documentaries as completely banal and boring. So I think you guys are onto something by wanting the filmmakers to bring a certain level of human experience into how they view nature.
Exactly that.
All right. So is there still a demand for this kind of content, and what are the growth prospects looking like when one sort of follows this industry in terms of, you know, obviously being a filmmaker within the wildlife space?
I definitely think there is a demand. I mean, you know, if you look at historically, if you look at how our stories have been told, it's always been from perspectives outside of South Africa and Africa. And it's time that these stories are told from our perspectives. You know, so often films are made in our country, and those people that the stories are made on never get to see those films. And we need to change that, and we need to make sure that the stories that are made about us, we see them and we are allowed to act on them and make a difference by viewing them and actually participating in them.
And speaking of participation, for filmmakers who are over 18 that are interested in entering the competition, what do they have to submit? Where can they submit it? And when do entries close?
Entries close in 7 days. We have 1 week. Entries close on the 10th of June. They go onto the website www.newf.co.za, that's NEWF.co.za, and you have to submit. All the entry guidelines are there, all the requirements, a synopsis, a treatment. You know, if you have any questions, if you have anything you need to know, you're more than welcome to email me and find out. But it's all there, it's on the website, a synopsis, a treatment, a profile on yourself, and more importantly, your story, your concept. What is that? And your motivation as to why you want to tell the story and make the story a reality. And you will win 50,000 Rand if you win. If you're successful at the pitch, you win 50,000 Rand to make the story a reality and make it happen.
And so let's talk after the entries have been received, what then is the process that you guys go through, sifting through the entries, taking a look at all these ideas and motivation letters and treatments? Who are the people behind the selection of who goes through to the next round?
Okay, so we have a team who go through all the entries that have been submitted. And from the entries that I've submitted, we select 8 people to come and present live during the Nature, Environment and Wildlife Filmmakers Congress. They pitch live in front of a panel of judges who then select 4. And those 4 win their 50,000 Rand to produce their short docu-film.
And I understand that there's also a mentorship program element also to this competition. Tell us about that.
Yes, there is. So after you win, you have 1 year to produce your short film. And during that time, we take you through mentorship and incubation to make sure, and we help you every step of the way to make sure that your story is one that can be sold internationally if necessary and go onto our South African broadcasting platforms so that these stories are made accessible to everybody, as well as taken to communities around South Africa so that these communities can also view these stories once they've been told.
Pragna, this is absolutely phenomenal. All the best with the competition, and I have no doubt that you will see talented South African filmmakers bringing their A game in order to make it, of course, to the last 4 that will be selected. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that was Pragna Parsotam-Kok at our Durban studios talking to us about the call for filmmakers to take part in the short documentary competition, which is aimed at discovering nature, environment, wildlife, as well as adventure conservation filmmakers.